So, what happens after we've written our scenes? Especially if we've written a scene and the characters are doing what they're supposed to be doing, the action is happening the way it's supposed to be happening, but it doesn't feel like it's landing. What's going wrong? How do we even begin to diagnose the problem? Well, today you're in for a bit of a treat because I am going to walk you through exactly how I personally go back and rewrite and revise a scene. I'm going to show you what I look for, how I evaluate what to keep, what I cut, how I think about all of the different elements that need to be working and firing on all cylinders in order to make a scene that is going to work. If you're in the middle of a rewrite too, grab your pages. Let's edit this together. I will take you through, and as I go through, you'll get essentially what amounts to a checklist for how to approach your own scene work and your own rewrites. Before we dive in, my name is Shannon Valenzuela. I'm an award-winning screenwriter, a novelist, and a short story writer, as well as a writing coach. And my passion is helping new and emerging writers discover their voice and share it with the world. So, without further ado, let's dive into the pages. All right, friends, welcome into this particular scene that I am working on today. I've pulled this out of my final draft document just to make it a little bit easier to keep track of. You can see that this script page, this scene is about 3.5 pages long. The scene runs really long for me. There is a lot of action that's happening in this particular scene. There's a lot of emotions that are happening in this scene. So one of the things that I personally like to look for is logical conflict between the characters and something that is happening in the scene that is going to anchor us into what's going to happen next. Okay, so obviously if we just kind of take a look at what's going on in this particular scene, we're dealing with a conflict over what to do next. Andy wants to go back, Will wants to keep going, and Jen is just excited to figure out that the place that they're standing is recognizable from the map that she has. That's a photo from a manuscript that she found. What I want to keep from this particular scene is this conflict here. This is core to these three characters and their interaction. Will's desire to push forward no matter the stakes, Andy's reluctance to take them any further beyond what she recognizes, and Jen's sort of naive, almost bumbling kind of excitement over recognizing things that she thinks are significant, right? That she's going to help. So this is a core conflict moment. We're going to see if this is the best way to communicate that. But for now, we want to keep that dynamic. Where does that show up again? Right here, where Will has almost been killed and they're kind of recollecting themselves. The conflict between Jen and Andy in particular is highlighted here. And Jen doesn't seem to take the message, right? Because she's back to it here. Andy is not getting what she wants in this scene. Jen is in a sense getting what she wants. She wants to keep pushing forward. She wants to follow the map is really what she wants to do, right? So that is working out. And Will, in a sense, is going to get what he wants, although they're starting to realize that this is coming with a catch. So there's some good character consistency things that are happening in this scene, but like I said, it feels too long. Some of these dialogue passages, we're not getting to the point fast enough, or we're dragging. So let's go back to this long pass at the end. I feel like we were about to get out of here and then we stop again and we're stuck. Okay, because Jen is like, oh, hey, and by the way, I figured out that there are runes. So I want to trim down this section here. And let's see how we can do that. I think that what we could do is we could cut this. This isn't really doing us any favors. So let's move this. Let's see what happens when we do that. Okay, well, that's great. I've just cut half a page out of this script, you know, that's good things. We're going to come back and do a word pass in just a second. I know that this is very wordy, so we're going to do that in a second. We want to get the structure right first, and then we'll go back and we'll clean up the language once we kind of get the movement of the scene going in the right direction and we cut out what doesn't need to be there. Okay, so when we do a rewrite, this is an important point. When we do a rewrite, we do it in layers. You don't want to start changing words around and deleting words and rewording things if you're going to just end up like I just did, cut a half a page out of this scene anyway. Okay, so we have to do this in layers, otherwise we end up wasting a whole lot of time. So the first things we want to focus on are major structural issues and character issues. We're going to want to do a dialogue pass, and then we want to go back to the scene description, and we want to start looking at, like, can we start rewording things to economize on the language? Okay. All right, this dialogue set here is still pretty long. Now that we've fixed that piece, let's just continue to make sure that this is going to work, okay? Once they get around the fissure, Jen shows them the photo of the map on her phone. Look, there are runes here next to the stalactite. It's a riddle. Will, can you read it? And she says parts of it. And then Andy, yeah, we got that. And then the whole, maybe we can avoid any more disasters. And then maybe we can cut this, right? Andy is done with all of this. She doesn't really care whether Jen is able to translate stuff or not. She says, let's move. There are worse things than earth movers down here. Validated immediately, of course, by the end of this scene where this happens. Okay, so that's a little bit tighter. One of the other questions that we can ask ourselves as we're looking through this scene is, whose scene is it, right? And I started to address this question when I asked myself earlier, who's getting what they want and who's not? Andy does not get what she wants. She is compelled to continue moving, as I said, by other characters' choices and by the consequences of those choices. Will gets what he wants, but he almost dies. So there's a catch to what he wants, okay? He almost dies getting it. Jen, in a sense, gets what she wants. She's a little bit interesting. And I wonder if it might help the scene if we clarified what she wants exactly. She is coming across in this scene a little bit like she's completely clueless. I'm not sure that's the vibe I want for her. So I'm not sure I'm satisfied with Jen's arc in this particular scene. And this brings up an important point as well. Something that I always like to remind my students when I'm teaching screenwriting, or any kind of writing for that matter, is that writing structurally works like a Mandelbrot fractal. Fractals are geometric figures where the smaller parts of the fractal are mirror images of the larger fractal shape. What that means is that if you have a beginning, a middle, and an end of this story as a whole, right, this script as a whole, the scene itself is going to have a beginning and a middle and an end. The difference is that the scene is going to have something that's going to escalate into the next scene. Using Jill Chamberlain's nutshell version, which I find really helpful to streamline structure. So we're going to have a setup, something that these characters want. They're going to have a point of no return where they get essentially what they want, but there's some kind of a catch to it. Then there's a crisis moment where they have to decide what they're going to do next. And then the choice either to move closer to whatever their flaw is, or more towards what their strength is in the denouement of the scene. So we have a 3-page scene here. We can roughly break that up into a 25, 50, 25 structure. So at about 25% of the way through this, we should have our point of no return. We should have the thing that happens that changes everything. The thing that happens is that Jen is stepping into the chamber and Andy says, stop moving. Okay, so this is the moment that is the point of no return. This is right about exactly where that needs to happen in the scene. This is right about exactly 25% into the scene. So yay me. That's a good thing. Structurally, that works. That really, really works. Okay, so that's great. As I said, the catch that's happening, okay, this place is on the map. Catch, there's a pressure plate. Okay, yay, thing is on the map. Jen gets what she wants. And now this is illuminating. Why is this illuminating? This is illuminating because what is happening here is that Jen is the driver of this scene. Because Jen is the one who's taking the actions that is creating this set of circumstances. It also turns out, by the way, this makes sense because Jen actually is the protagonist of the story. Okay, so while Andy seems like she's the POV, Jen is actually the driver because she's actually the protagonist. Okay, so these are the things that are becoming illuminated as we work through this rewrite. And then we're going to have the crisis. Okay, the crisis moment is that it seems like Will is going to be dead and that it's her fault that he almost died. So the crisis moment is, in a sense, this moment right here, right? Jen's crisis. I'm sorry. This is her fault, right? Her choice to follow the map and step into the cavern is what has caused this massive complication in their lives, right? She's almost gotten somebody killed. The crisis question that emerges for Jen in this moment is she going to continue to disobey Andy's orders and follow her own way? Or is she going to follow Andy's orders and do what she's supposed to do? Now, what's really interesting is that I've presented in this scene a third option. A third option. What is the third option? The third option is that Jen finds a way to contribute to what's going on in a way that doesn't compromise Andy's leadership, but leans into her own gifts. She's going to start focusing on what she can solve. So the third option isn't abandon her role and completely give over everything to Andy's control. It's not continue to insist on her own way and charge unknowingly into everything because she thinks she knows what she's doing. The third option is exactly this. Maybe if I can solve them, maybe we can avoid any more disasters. Okay. So this is a move towards Jen's set of strengths. We're going to move forward, and we have a further complication. So we end on another complication. There are worse things than earth movers down here, says Andy. And that is verified, of course, at the end here with this bulbous thing that's coming out of this chasm behind them. So structurally now, I'm really happy with this. I think we could still tweak it. We could still whittle it down. We're going to start doing that on a language level now. Okay, this is really wordy. Let's see. Squeezes out of a tunnel opening that's been partially blocked by rubble. How could we reword that to save on some words? Squeezes out of a partially collapsed tunnel opening and shines her light around. Okay, so I just cut half a line there. I don't think we need moving past her, right? Andy stops them. I don't think we need Will to say this, right? Andy stops them with this line of dialogue. This isn't right. We should go back. Okay, so we've eliminated a little bit. We can still do some more passes, but let's continue on. My visual for this, right? This little moment here is I'm picturing the three of them standing sort of at the mouth of this they've just emerged out of this partially collapsed tunnel, which suggests that the place is unstable, by the way, also. And I'm picturing her backing into this cavern as she's kind of looking up and looking at the map. You know, if you've ever been a tourist and you're like looking up into like an architectural space and you're kind of like backing up, you know, that's sort of the vibe that I was going for here. I don't know that I need to communicate it in quite this level of detail. So let's see. What if we said, hey, this place is on the map. Maybe phone in hand, she heads for the stalactite. Okay, so that cut that down a little bit. We know that the map is on her phone, so this makes sense. I don't need to specify all of that stuff. So she heads for the stalactite. Andy, stop moving. Jen swings around. I think we can do this active. Takes a step backward, and the stone sinks beneath her foot. A pressure plate. A terrible sound. Like I don't need caps here. Grinding of massive gears. Stones shower around them. Don't need down. I like this language here. A ferocious web of cracks appears around the stalactite. I don't think we need to have Will say that. We could have Will say, Jen, run. Okay, and then we have her basically frozen here. Jen stares upward as the stalactite, I'm going to not say begins to, we're just going to say comes loose. And then Will sprints toward her. Let's make this all really active, right? Will sprints toward her. Shoves her out of the way as the stalactite, we don't need comes free and falls, obviously. Shoves her out of the way as the stalactite falls, shoves her out of the way. How about this? Of the falling stalactite. Flinging himself out of the way, he barely avoids being impaled. I don't think I need her to roll out of the way. He's knocked her out of the way, right? So Will rolls and barely... Will rolls just before he is impaled by the falling rock. It pierces through the floor, opens a fissure beneath him. We don't need right. Beneath him. Okay, he scrabbles for a handhold, misses, disappears into the abyss. Okay, Jen inches toward the edge of the fissure as Andy picks her way across the floor from the other side. They reach the crack at the same time and shine their lights into the abyss. Okay, that's pretty good. All right, Andy pulls a paracord out of her bag, ties it off on how about let's just say on a rock. She flings the other end of the rope to Will. Okay, Will lunges for it. He loses his grip on the stone, but the rope snaps taut as he catches hold of it. Okay, slowly he pulls himself up. Andy grabs his arms as he reaches the surface and hauls him out. He collapses on the stone. Okay, that's all pretty good. Try to avoid adverbs. Usually adverbs are a sign of a weak verb if you have to modify it, but sometimes they're helpful. In this case, I kind of want to give this like hand over hand, like he's really struggling. Andy making sure he's not hurt. Well, she's already asked him that. I actually like this line of dialogue better here. Let's cut this. There. Great. Okay. Are you hurt? Will, I lost my pack, which I love this because this is a character note. Will is an experienced search and rescue guy. He's not going to necessarily want to be like, oh yes, I've scraped my hands. His response is, I lost my pack. Your supplies that you've carried in with you, that's all you have. So him losing his pack is far more significant to him than like a few bruises and bumps and things like that. And then here's Jen. I'm sorry. Next time, do what I tell you. We've already worked through this. Okay. Picking their way around the fissure suggests care, so that's an adverb we can cut right there. Okay, Will and Andy pick their way around the fissure. Jen shows them the photo of the map on her phone. Okay, this is still kind of bothering me a little bit, right? This section here. She's just finished apologizing, and she hasn't really had time to look at her phone. So maybe we could have her say something like, I saw these runes, but I didn't realize what they meant. And then Will could ask her, maybe he could say something like, you can read those. This is establishing a skill that she's going to need later on anyway. Parts of them, or some of them. There's an earth mover asleep, I think. Stepping on him wakes him up. Yeah, we got that. Okay, right. Okay, right. I messed that up. Okay, so we don't need to say that twice. Right, I messed that up. Every blah, blah, blah. If I can save them, maybe we can go in. Okay. As darkness overtakes the cavern, I kind of want to set this apart. A faint scuttling sound. I don't need this in all caps. And something bulbous emerges from the chasm. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so guess what, guys? Look at that. We started with a 3.5 page scene. We are now down to 2.5 pages. It's a lot tighter. The dialogue is much more aligned with our characters. Our protagonist is the one doing the action in the scene that is propelling us through to the conclusion, and different characters are not getting what they want. Okay, so this is an example of like just how detailed scene rewriting can be. Now, I did take us through an entire rewrite. You notice that I did probably 3 actually rewrites on this particular scene combined into one. I did the first pass, which is a structure pass and a character pass. The second one was going through and looking at the dialogue and making sure we were cutting out unnecessary things. We rearranged some stuff to cut this down. The final step, of course, is to go through our language and to make sure that we are not overwriting the scene. Is there more that I could do here? Possibly, but I want to leave this alone for now. And once I have this in the context of the entire script, I can make another pass through and make sure that it lines up. But that's, in short, how I go through and edit a scene. So I hope that this demonstration was helpful for you and that you now have a better idea when you go to rewrite your own work, what kinds of things should you be looking for and what kinds of things can you do to help your writing be stronger, leaner, and potent and powerful on the page. If you have any questions about how I worked through this particular scene, or you want to see more or learn more about the different aspects of the scene that I edited, if you want me to do a deep dive on any particular one of those aspects, please drop a comment below. Let me know. I would love to help you get better at rewriting your own material, because the truth of the matter is, all writing honestly is rewriting. And the better and the more proficient that we can get at revising our own work, the better those drafts are going to be when we send them in for feedback from our representatives or from editors or people that we bring on to our project, beta readers, anyone we are asking to give us feedback. Those notes are going to be a much higher quality if we can get them a draft that is in really, really good shape. You can also check out the link in the description box for a free revision checklist. This takes you through some of the questions and some of the things that I worked through in today's video, and that can help you just start to build your own rewrite checklist and get you started on this process of improving this particular skill. Right. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.